Drag racing's many exciting aspects are that, historically speaking, in the field of athletics, there have been notable vehicles that have made a lasting impression about the development of the pursuit: the hilarious 1966 Mercury flip-top Dawn, an unusual engine dragster with garlets on it, and irritable Jenkins in 1971 during his 1972 Pro Vega stock. But how about the vehicle that someone has been blamed for the murder of a legendary drag racing class that just one devastating impact on a whole class? I am here today to answer the following question: the vehicle that was lethal to the gasser vehicles, such as enhanced performance in drag racing, is a product of evolution. Those who own them and care for them help them develop. Proprietor who must be addressed at this time is George Montgomery, an Ohio native who was born in 1933. The Dayton location of George's speed shop. At the age of 17, I began working at a factory with his dad and making use of his secondary business, which involved speed chopping. Lived both lives until 1964. After he left his job in the manufacturing business, he ran the speed shop on a full-time basis during remarkable abilities he had acquired in tool, as well as metalworking, machining, and die making, making full restitution to him throughout a hot-rodding career that was unlike anything else of its scale and breadth. While he was at George's speed shop, the nation's longest continuously running one is still going strong in Dayton, Ohio. Our Ernest, 1959, is where the narrative really starts. At the time, just before the New Hampshire State Championships, in George of Detroit created a bot, and in 1933, this device bucked the Willys racing car, the practice of using the 40 or 41, the physique of Willie, or even the more well-known the pre-war Ford Coups that are now in disrepair yards proliferated and were available for so little that the tiny Willys were smaller in size compared to Fords or subsequent versions from Willys, and it was less heavy and run on a 44 cubic inch Cadillac motor that has been previously removed. Has a standard Willys engine that produces 390 CI body that had been brightened. Sure made a Pontiac's rear axle lighter and a hydrostatic gearbox in conjunction with a basic tire and suspension. Montgomery's technology dominated the market, securing first place in the US. The 1959 to 1960 Nationals used this combination. 1961, he shot the first place finish in the 1959 race, recognized on a national level, with a peak speed of the category operating on AGS supercharged 130. 50 miles per hour in 1960 in Detroit, he provenly arrived at a vehicle that was previously fitted with a front suspension with a coilover design that the tech guys utterly frightened out, but the twisted position enabled it to function. It to 1,153 feet of highways, a regulation modification in New Hampshire in 1963 when Montgomery reevaluates his engine option. The big 414 cubic inch Cadillac rolled out, whereas a small block Chevrolet was eliminated 375 cubic inches with a decrease of 40 to surpass the Cadillac, which enabled the vehicle in order to operate with less weight by integrating that truthfully. After some astute advancements in the car's suspension, that Montgomery had a time machinery capable of surpassing the significantly more robust and substantial Chrysler Hemi engine vegetation for the first portion of the Detect and halt their massive assessment of the second part of the fiscal year mile. And I'll keep in mind all the way up to now, George, the protagonist of our Ohio tale, was doing his duties at the factory job, cut corners, while driving and speeding to the best of his ability in his racing vehicle, which was now recognized on a national level as the premier, the most incredible transformations that might occur, and he departed from his position at the facility in 1964 and threw in the towel after a while, much to his parents' dismay, who failed to see that this rapidly expanding sports and business would not only be kind to their boy and welcome him into its arms. By 1965, he had lived his whole life. Montgomery gained fame on a national scale, and traversing the country with a nomadic band of hero gassers who are peaking in their notoriety and prominence in the face of Star Wars, was well liked by the general population. Vehicles that seem so untamed, drivers and performances that are combining show it off to the world in a drag race. Today's newspapers and periodicals just as trash talking incites anger in contemporary drag racing. It functioned as a allure in those days. It seemed peculiar to state within the framework of contemporary drag when racing, but historically speaking, top gasoline racers were just as famous as the most skilled top fuel racers present. Were more and more men competing nitro engines in full-body vehicles, however, seemed to be an unorthodox fad that was going to perish because someone get irritated attempting in order to produce really powerful automobiles and strength training on the track. Maybe that might have been the match racing track. Maybe it was a little arrogance, or maybe the individual in question lacked any leisure time, but George was shit-faced. The 1965 New Hampshire State Championships it had been so long since he had last lost a round. He said in 1959 that he had clung on for a year on the little block Chevy for an excessive amount of time, and he had become someone else entirely using the hottest combination and the hottest hand. The East Coast racer Jack Merkle was enthusiastic about the then new Mark V huge slammed Ohio George with a block Chevy, and it was generating news coverage and releasing, taking Merkle into space as a geyser extraordinary. Someone such as Montgomery Merkle was a mechanic who dedicated his whole life to when getting back to Dayton. In terms of athletics, Charlie Gray was approached by Ohio Montgomery, that oversaw the Ford Motorsports division, and explored the engines that Gray has to give. Little parcels. Montgomery desired a 427, either a single overhead cam engine or none at all due of their novelty and scarcity. These engines they were unable to provide him with a full one, thus pieces showed up just when they were constructed a timing belt for a cylinder head chain at that period. He received every component he needed and put them together the engine by means of his expertise in the field. Competent constructor. To finish the project without instructional handbook for the manufacturing process, Montgomery had to consider the engine size in order to subtly alter the willies. Noses that include protrusions to allow the valve covers. He had to make sure he could nestle into them. The bell casing he uses for himself with to get the engine started, and adjusted the vehicle from top to bottom to guarantee that massive 427 and a single overhead cam overturned is capable of obtaining the most power that it produced at a satisfactory level. These motors have found use in gasoline dragsters and alternative powerful nitro-powered vehicles. Someone had not yet installed one in a gas burner, thus numerous questions remained unresolved. And thereafter drove to the racetrack, sounded monstrous, and, without delay, had the ability to run in the surrounding area of the National Archives site. In 1966, this automobile was unveiled to the world, and nothing let them down about the exceptional character of the vehicle's powertrain and chassis. What happened in Ohio, George, and the reality, because it was Ford's doing that caused this machine to be adored by the media around magazine features that highlighted the vehicle. Regulars gathered to see it at each game competition, and it annihilated them all at the American citizens. The Gasser King was once again seated on his throne. And here we find the tale takes a thrilling turn due to a many interesting things occurring span from the debut of the vehicle to the end of that. Garnering first place earned one a summons to a Ford wind tunnel to determine the extent to which aerodynamically. The 1933 Willy Brandt body. This work was completed in 1966, and Montgomery found the outcomes to be horrifying. Claimed that the little vehicle was 60 kg of backlift at 125 miles per hour. At higher speeds, the situation deteriorated worse. In this phenomenon, he was moving at a much quicker pace, which, in essence, sought to elevate the back of the vehicle away from the track at swiftness. Clarified the carelessness traits that the Willys exhibited while upper echelons, and its intended application across lane change from left to right as it travels through. The whole vehicle was plagued with deadly traps, to the point that not even the engineers, stunned by a drastic cut to the ceiling in the purpose of offshore seas, was to elevate its state. But that was only a small fraction of what transpired was significantly more paramount. In the immediate aftermath of a storm session in the tunnel, Montgomery was in a Ford. Charlie was driving to a factory function. Gray, the executive of the motorsports program, he was given a Ford. Vice Donald Fryer was chosen president, as reported by looking down at his automobile. Montgomery Fry said, "I believed we sold Ford's Fry. About to turn off the power to the support. All right, on the go." But with lightning speed, Gray had a concept that Ford was going to manufacture 1967 Mustang fastbacks in a limited edition body made of fiberglass for the recently humorous vehicle category, that its Mercury branch had assisted Quantum take flight on the backs of their Comets. Smartly, he was offered one to Montgomery, abandoned in the event that Montgomery subsequently collaborated with the Mukhtarak party of Bill Farage, the one responsible for the NHRA's technological division, to guarantee that the upcoming Mustang would adhere strictly to the regulations. Over time, the gears were first only for use with American-made vehicle bodywork, and so vehicles from other countries could enter, but no regulation ever prohibited the use of a Mustang. This Mustang was a late model type vehicle, on track to become the first genuine late model in what has been said about the class's past legally. The vehicle must still have to have a foundational automotive frame with a lot of scattered, and collaborating with Dismuka. Willys' frame from 1933 was Montgomery's choice for bolster. The Mustang's strange but real choice adhered strictly to all regulations everything was transpiring because of. The overbearing peoples and the media's gazes who had saw Montgomery lead the Willies in a charge during the 1967 NHRA Winter Nationals. Two hearsay suggesting he was acting strangely comparable to other gasser heroes also spread speculation that he was constructing a gas or doomsday device of some kind firearm, but no one has concrete evidence. Prior to his rolling into the gate situated at the 1967 Eastern Nationals in conjunction with the tech department for Mustang went into a frenzy. Astonished onlookers and the vehicle's lengthy, better airflow, reduced center of gravity, significantly enhanced the suspension, and an instantaneous increase in engine temperature. The Mustang destroyer plowed headfirst into all eight, seeming to be free in the months to come. Who among us could ever entertain the idea that a performance of the kind that declared it may have been easily identified? It seemed as if the 1967 Mustang gasser, similar to the 1967 Mustang's offbeat singing higher volume vehicles, wore out their tires, raced through the issues at a breakneck pace. In 1965, pertaining to internal combustion engines problems with full-body vehicles nonetheless, they were ridiculously cut down to size. Vehicles weren't only picking up speed, they were on the verge of soaking the whole perform like a blob in the months leading up to debut at the New Hampshire. The Mustang altered the regulations once again and authorized complete tubular chassis for vehicles with gas-powered superchargers. The gates were unlocked for a huge inflow of physical types from the late models, from Opels to Corvettes, Fish, and more. It moreover aided a few of the elderly designs that are similar to Austin still remain competitive by reducing their core gravity, while also cutting down on how well they disperse in water and automobiles' maneuverability as they plunged into the machine. Similar to a Camaro of Mike Mitchell's Corvette, owned by Ron Hassel, the Brad Anderson's Mallow Brothers Barracuda Darts, and a plethora of other games that are just as challenging and quickly as the later models of machinery arrived, the country was about to go onto insanity over amusing automobiles production companies that were normally ads for their inventory, and superstock rivals were glued to the hilarious superstars who started the automobile frenzy are their motors, and moreover, boosting the public's eagerness to witness only regionally and nationally famous drivers as they reach their residence. They dragged the soon after. Gassers started to experience the strain of this situation, even though the year 1967 came to a close. Montgomery was exceeding 165 miles per hour in his 850s. A gas-powered Mustang, the Malco Mustang, took first place in United States citizens in 1,967 and 68. In 1969, Montgomery created a brand new vehicle with a Hit Boss 429 square in the face. I didn't think this vehicle was going to be a hit. About the Malco Mustang and the one it uses because it has an overhead cam engine, but that is altered in 1,973 in 1974. As a result of his having the turbocharger blower removed in triumphing consecutive years of the Gator Nationals. He was graciously informed by the NH Tech Department. They showed little enthusiasm about ever meeting the yet again, however. This is all ignoring our task at hand, which is to determine in case the Malco Mustang gasser fatally affected the gasser class. Did not. And this dude ended up with the automobile. Descend down the ages by means of those who don't understand the situation and would want a fast solution to a problem in the past that does not. In any case, far back when Ohio was a state, the late model body, according to George, was not always accurate. However, he is usually cited as proclaiming, and what is plainly right, the funny car's meteoric climb has arrived. Slain gasser when serving as the premier list of drag strips for the sport of drag racing when two vehicles replicate one another's look, even if it's just about the one that is quicker and more menacing sounding, responsible for capturing the interest of the educated on the gas's natural evolution. Here, Montgomery, a racing was executed, did not do anything, and the last 6 other individuals were engaged on tasks at much the same intervals with the same thought he completed at first. The Mustang proposed by Montgomery was never realized. Austin Angelis's class is full of little people, and the fate of Fords would have been the same. Sure enough, there are a number of crucial considerations among them, including these amusing automobiles, but the modifications applied to the class at the time superimposed on the list of super eliminators. The AA was mixed with NH in the late 1960s. Gassers and street roadsters persistent watering down to give the precise definition of a gasser. Many enthusiasts and perplexed individuals continued after taking a humorous vehicle course, or starting at affluent stockholders, and others of the era Montgomery combined with a few of the top tier. Most famous gasser titans oversaw a robust program of match races for couple seasons throughout the 60s and 70s. 70s may participate in more than one race each of the season on a weekly basis. Although time went on, Even those days started to dwindle in 1970. The year that track began advertising blown, weird vehicles that run on gas instead of phoning. No longer do they use gassers, and moreover, regional gas explosion in the South, though inactive, California remained a magnet for from its earlier incarnation. The major players' funny car racing has ended, thus are asserting that this is the automobile that ended the gasser era, the particular one, along with that other one, and your evaluation would be far more accurate in the circumstances. The gassers constituted ideal drag racing main attraction for a glorious occasion in the first half from the 60s. But like with everything in history, shift taste shift, and thanks for letting nitromethane be king. Enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, movies, and other media.